This is Hot Mic. Hot Mic on the networks of WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2, ready to rock and roll here on this Friday morning. Football Friday, final hour of the week. NFL picks with my dad coming up here in about a half hour. Special picks as well of the FCS semifinals. Don't miss that coming up in a half hour's time. I can't believe we've made it all the way to the end of the so-called season. After tomorrow, we have one game left, and I haven't had our next guest on. That's on me. The funny backstory on this, about 15 years ago, I reached out to him and said, hey, do the Bison have a chance to make the playoffs if they've won 7 games, are in the mix? And lo and behold, Craig Haley gave me the whole lowdown on that yeah, they got a pretty good chance. And despite the fact they lost a 3-0 game to Missouri State the next day, they made the FCS playoffs. And 15 years later, here we are with a potential another trip to the national championship game at stake. It's great to see you, bud. Happy holidays. How you been?
I'm doing real well. Happy holidays. I know the big guy's on his way, and I'm not talking Santa. I know your dad has made me a warm-up act today, but I always enjoy him.
I appreciate that. He is a fan favorite for everybody. I know you can't give us the lowdown on who won, but the anticipation for the Peyton is about as high as I can remember. You've run this for a long time. Give us the insight on this award and how close this potentially could be in a couple weeks.
Excellent point, Dom. This is my 15th year with the awards, and the Walter Payton Award, I've been saying I feel like it's as close as possible. Not only do you have an incredible running back in Tarjay Lamson of Southern Utah, but try and separate Cam Miller and Tommy Mellott. It's almost impossible. And it's been that way from week to week. You look at their stats and you just are amazed how similar they are and where their teams reside in the national picture. I agree. I think this is the year of maybe the closest vote.
Do you know now, or do you not know yet who won?
I do know. Mum's the word.
I knew that. Marty Brown has won the Jerry Rice Award. Second time that a Bison has captured that award. Give us the lowdown for people that don't know, Craig, what will happen down in Frisco for the actual presentation of that, the Peyton, the Buchanan, and the Eddie Robinson Award.
Yes, it's a terrific event. This is the 38th year for the awards. The Jerry Rice Award, as you mentioned, is in its 14th season for the National Freshman of the Year. I mean, that was another close vote.
Yep.
You know, Marty Brown, Adam Jones of Montana State. You could go back and forth with them. We've already announced Marty as the recipient. He's invited to the ceremony. The ceremony, the banquet, is 2 nights prior to the championship game, which is different from past years. So we do expect everybody who's invited to the banquet to be there. I mean, how do you go wrong with Marty Brown? The consistency and the production he's had all year, running the ball in his physical, terrific style.
How much is this, the banquet itself, I've been a handful of times, just changed under your watch over the last handful of years to see where the amount of attention on it has grown?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, we try and take the banquet to another level with each year. This year, we've actually added a 6th award, an HBCU Plus National Player of the Year. That was Eric Phoenix, the South Carolina State quarterback. So, yes, I do think we've raised the level of the banquet. It's almost like New Year's Eve, the night of the banquet, the ballroom and the setup. Gary Reasons is our host. Obviously, he's an FCS legend as a 3-time All-American, won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. So I do think people really look to, especially when you have 3 finalists for the Buchanan and Peyton Awards there for the actual announcement.
I think my favorite reaction when Gary read that Trey Lance won, he actually stopped for a second and because that perked my ears up, because wow, Trey Lance, that one got me because that was I think Gary was even caught off guard.
Well, I can say that he actually is given the envelope and along the way doesn't actually know. And obviously Trey being a freshman, the first freshman winner of the Walter Payton, he had already been announced as the Jerry Rice Award winner. I was always surprised that year how people were surprised just because he was a freshman, but what a season he had. I mean, what was it, 28 touchdowns and no interceptions off the top of my head. I mean, that's just phenomenal. And they wound up 16-0, and he was the championship game MVP. So I just think, yes, I mean, there's an element of surprise even for our MC.
3 Valley teams are left of the 4. Is that a good thing or a bad thing in your mind?
Well, 4 years now of Dakotas and Montana schools, so it's even worse than that. I think I do enjoy having dynasty national powers. It draws attention to the FCS level, but 4 years in a row of this kind of dominance, probably not a good thing. And going into the season, you throw in Montana, those were the 5 top teams in the poll. So everybody saw this coming. It's played out that way. It's not good for the rest of the FCS. Everybody's almost taking a step backward, and the gap is getting bigger.
We got to see Abilene up close, Craig. Tarleton gave USD a heck of a run. Those are the schools new to the FCS, and I say new in quotation marks, but based in Texas, and I hope they stick around in FCS, that can bubble up and I think be good just because of the location of where they're at.
Yeah, that's fertile recruiting areas, as you know, and the southern schools, whether it's Texas, Florida, or across the South. I mean, that's where many kids want to play, and not necessarily play outdoors. If you have a dome like the Bison, that probably helps attracting talent. But I agree. I mean, there's a little bit of a change behind the power conferences. I mean, look at like a Mercer getting as far as they did this year. I mean, there's new teams, but again, until they improve especially in the trenches, there's still just a gap between especially North Dakota State and South Dakota State and Montana State.
The CAAs in your backyard, it was not good. It was not a good playoff run for the Coastal. What do they need to do? Outside, I think they're too big personally. In your mind, how do they get better?
Yes. I mean, 16 schools this year, programs, that's just a big clump of standings. They were all good. Nobody really great.
Yeah.
I'm surprised somebody didn't slip through to the quarterfinals. I mean, for them not even get the quarterfinals, that's not a good sign. And as the largest conference in FCS history, they'll be back to 14 next year and losing 2 good programs,
right,
in Delaware and Richmond. So I agree. I mean, they just really have to hit it right in recruiting. Obviously, they have good facilities, they've had history, but they've really, the gap, to me, even in the emergence of the Big Sky in Missouri Valley, they were the 3rd best. It may not be the case right now.
Let's go. I want to go backwards to the Bison first. I want to start with South Dakota making their first semifinal appearance. The 4 seed. They struggled with Tarleton, but won the game. Crazy game with Davis. Give us your assessment of USD heading to Bozeman for this one tomorrow.
I think obviously, they're peaking. I mean, they're coming in right. They haven't played outdoors in 2 months.
Nope.
Again, they practice outside, which helps them in that. But I think their ball security is big. They don't really make. I say that when then you look at last week's game, but overall, for several seasons they've been this way. The one pause I have is even in this winning streak, and I think it's 5 now. The last 4, they've given up like 29 points or more. Montana State hasn't even been below 30, so I think that's the pause here. Going to the Bobcats, it'll be a raucous environment. But again, if Travis Tice, has a big game, like he's really come on strong, that they just can't make mistakes, and possibly they won't.
Brent Vigen's team started off the year with the win over New Mexico. They cruised the non-conference. Heck, they cruised to the Big Sky, Craig. They've been dominant all year long. They've been the number 1 team, even though they haven't been ranked number 1 until the Bison lost to South Dakota. Give me your assessment of how good Montana State has been this season.
Well, they just steamroll you with that running game. And Tommy Malot's actually been pretty hot with the passing game, in recent weeks, which is a great sign. I just think, similar to USD, having to protect the ball, they also have to stop Montana State drives. Montana State has been tremendous on 3rd downs. They've won 34 out of their last 35 home games. Just the Bison lost last year in the second round. I just think Montana State has a way of coming out and just imposing their will, doing what they do, similar to the Bison for the year. So I just think if they play their normal game, it's going to be tough to beat them at home.
Round one between the Bison and the Jacks was a crazy game. South Dakota State fell 13-9 in a game where special teams end up really being the difference maker. The Jacks look like a different crew since that game, and the Bison have won, but just have looked kind of the last couple of weeks. What's your assessment of this one for tomorrow?
I still think it's a toss-up. I think South Dakota State deserves to be the favorite here, and they are, field goal or so. They are playing the best out of anybody in the playoffs, even better than Montana State. I think Jimmy Rogers is fascinating how he's stepped into this position. He is so focused and has his team so focused at all times. Mark Gronowski has pushed the button in the playoffs and gone to a higher level. I mean, I just think, yes, they deserve to be the favorite. I'm sticking with the Bison. I picked them to win by 1 just because they were my preseason pick in January. I had them 1 and Jackrabbits 2.
Yeah.
I'll go the distance with that, but I think the Jackrabbits should be the favorite here on the road.
Well, there's only one team that's ever won a playoff game in Fargo. That was the team that won the national championship in James Madison in 2016. And that's the point I wanted to go to before we wrap up the playoff segment, that we haven't had a road semifinalist win since then. It was 2016. What's the chances of that? How difficult, I guess, is it? We've seen it now 7 years in a row that nobody's gone and done that.
It is funny that it gets to be that way. I mean, obviously, your favorite Jackrabbits here. I would have to say Montana State's going to win.
Yeah.
It could be a split at best, perhaps. But I mean, again, these are the 4 elite teams this year. They've been that way all year. I mean, USD's lowest ranking was 6. The other schools have been above that the whole time, and that just shows you how consistent these teams have been to get here. Again, I hope for the best matchup. And actually, the playoffs haven't even been terrific with the actual games. I mean, last year I think the playoff games totally rocked.
Yes.
This year,
Yep.
So I hope they come down to the end. However they turn out, just great games.
I hope so too, considering the competition tomorrow for eyeballs is tough with the CFP starting and there's NFL games tomorrow. It's awesome that they're on ABC, but boy, it's going to be tough sledding to get people to watch tomorrow. I really believe that.
Even just knowing that, I mean, it's almost unbelievable how this has all come together.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost like the perfect day for football fans. But you're right. I mean, it may draw some eyeballs away from the FCS matchups. At least they're early and back to back. I think that helps. But I mean, you're not going to get a better lineup than these 2 semifinals. So hopefully, they're great games.
So I want to say probably the last 2 or 3 times I've had you on my show, I've had to ask you about the Ivy League in the postseason. And then I get the email Wednesday morning. I almost fell out of my chair that this happened. I know you've been following us for a long time. What do you know about this and how this came about that now the Ivy League will participate in the FCS playoffs?
I've always told you that I think it was the presidents using the excuse about academics.
Yes.
They just wanted their season to end with the big matchups, especially Harvard, Yale. There's been, desire all along of everybody involved in football, coaches, players, fans, to have them advance to the playoffs. So it's finally happened 80 years after their postseason ban. They'll have a team in next year. I think the league has taken a little bit of a step back this decade. Maybe NIL has a factor in there. But, this is, their champion will probably always play in the first round. Will have a chance to get to the second round. Right now, I don't think they have the level to get to the quarterfinals, although they always have terrific talent and NFL kind of talent. But I just think right now they're going to have to step it up. They're never going to get a high seed because right now they're out of conference schedules are pretty weak. So that may factor in as we move forward. But again, it's great for the Ivy League. People have been clamoring around for it around the FCS for a long time.
Do you believe that will change their thought process on out of conference scheduling now that they're into that they might do that?
Dom, I think they have to, and I think the coaches will kind of push for that and have a little more say in that. They're right now they're locked into games with the Patriot League, the Pioneer League. They dabble in some games with the CAA and, an NEC or MEAC. But, yeah, you want to be able to at least have one game on your schedule that you can really spotlight as, hey, this is our resume, So I think, yes, I think that'll eventually happen.
Kolbeck and I were talking about this yesterday. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. With the amount of high-powered boosters out there that are Ivy alums to say, hey, if we're eligible for this now, to maybe get our collective in gear and say, let's do this if we have a chance now to play for a championship.
That would probably help for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that would help. I think, right, I think in recent years, as the league has sort of taken a little bit of a step back with their power teams, I think they've always told recruits, hey, your NIL is the 40 years after graduation.
Yes.
That is going to be your payoff. So they may still go that route, but you're right. I mean, you would think some alumni are going to take interest and raise that collective.
I would, just guys from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, I mean, come on. I've routinely, and I'm grateful that you've given me a vote in the poll. I routinely, when a team is winning games in the Ivy, I've had them ranked at the bottom. Any time between 18 and 25 in the poll. I would firmly believe they could go and win games against the Ohio Valley, against the Big South, against the CAA. I would love to see them challenge themselves against the Big Sky in the Valley. I hope that happens.
Well, you're in Columbia colors today, so I think
I am.
You can make a donation to the Columbia NIL collective.
I don't think my grades were ever going to sniff Columbia, but I'm glad that we actually can have this conversation now that the Ivy League is in the party for next season. My last thing to you, to see the field seeded to 16, how much did that help in getting the best bracket that we could have?
Incredible job, I think, with the seeding because, top 8 seeds advance to the quarters, the top 4 advance to the semis. We'll see how it goes for tomorrow. I think it made for less regional play.
Yep.
Slightly, not on, a huge scale, but there's only 3 possible after tomorrow. There's only 3 rematches from the regular season, only 2 from within conference with NDSU and SDSU being one of the 2. So it really did kind of give you a little bit different look, maybe not like in a big way, but enough. But I do think the seeding worked out. And we still had somewhat of a regional look in the first round, but I think it worked out well. It makes sense to not just bid for games like they did for years.
Sorry, I had one more. The championship game going to Nashville. Your thoughts on, does Frisco get it back? I know this is hard to look 3 years down the road. I know Frisco wants it back. Do you think they get it back?
I think they do. I think there'll be, a feeling on the NCAA's end to say, that they treated us well as a host city and they keeping, upgrading their facilities at Toyota Stadium and have already done it once, about to do it again. I almost feel they owe it to Frisco to go back. And I haven't had a problem with it the way, fans want a larger stadium, but I just think it's been a terrific host city. I think it'll be back, but eventually start to move around more regularly.
Nashville will be interesting, though, as well. I'll be curious to see how this comes about. It's great to see you, bud. Have a great holiday. I will see you in a couple of weeks in Texas, okay?
Happy holidays to you and all your listeners.
Thanks, Craig. Craig Haley from FCS Stats, analyst there. Of course, he'll be the presenter for the awards that'll happen in 2 weeks' time. It's 2 weeks from tomorrow. We'll find out the Walter Payton winner, the Buck Buchanan winner, down in Frisco, Texas. And obviously the Bison with a chance there. See if their team is going to Frisco, Texas. We'll know by about 2:30 tomorrow. We'll take a break. Got a couple things to get to, a couple emails as well. NFL picks coming up here as well in about 15 minutes. Back on Hot Mic right after this.